What was the learning curve for you when you first started having to hunt late season because of your business, not being able to hunt during the rut or early season? What was the learning curve for you to start finding deer and trying to have some success later in the season?
I think the biggest thing is hunting pressure. That while I was out there, no one else was. And the deer, if you take a deer that isn't hunted, the longer time that he isn't hunted by a human, the more his guard's down. So you have everybody, and I hunt all public land, so everybody is doing the same thing in a rut. And then you can kind of find the times of the year when they're not pressured and you have that angle, that chance on them. Like maybe for an early October hunt, end of September, the guys ain't, like in this area, they're not really coming to the north woods till the rut, and when you were younger, it was always the rut, but then everybody hunts the rut. And I found a lot of deer can be nocturnal, these old mature deer, and just breed does at night and stuff like that. And so they start letting their guard down. And it was like when I would do that hunting late season, I'm like, there's nobody here, so that was what I learned to focus on, to find, you have, first of all, nobody in the woods, so the deer would come back around to their normal, they will get out of the nocturnal, their crepuscular type lifestyle, and more diurnal, really, with the cold temperatures. I feel like what I've learned is the deer will move more, they'll bed through the coldest time of the days, which is night. Into the morning, when it drops down, it seems like it's colder at daylight, and then they'll move, the weather's warmer, so like, I didn't have to get into the woods till 9 o'clock. So I hunted 10 till dark, and that's when all the feeding, the activity was. Now that's, the other variables, the weather. Now, so you have to have that cold weather. But I think the pressure is just how I started, what I would see that was helping me, and then just escalated there by seeing you needed the cold weather and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that. But and as far as the pressure, you can put too much pressure on that animal, and he'll go right back into that November, pressured type lifestyle that he lived, nocturnal. It don't take much, man. It's just that one door slam at that parking spot that no one's been to in 2 months, and boom, he's back. You let your guard down a little bit, he's going to be on guard himself. It's going to reverse really fast. So that's one thing I really learned, because you get into January and you start taking some shortcuts. Like I know of a hunt like 2 years ago, just right up this drain from a parking lot at the road, that this buck, there was a patch of oaks and there was bucks there, but there was so much hunting pressure that they evacuated. And that's another thing. So you find the areas that have the deer, what the deer want, the habitat, the food. You find those areas on its public, but in October, November, people will flush them out, or like a covey of quail, they'll be gone. So you still have all that mast or whatever food browses there, so that gives them another reason to be there, because they're going to flush out and go live on private or way up on a mountain or somewhere and feed and, devour all the food there. Then they're going to come back to these pressured areas, and that's where your food is. So I learned that just by running cameras, like, oh, there's good deer, there's good population of deer, good habitat, food, whatever it may be, terrain. And so you'd see the deer in like early October, then November, it's like desolate. And then boom, it would be like a gradual increase in deer as you get into December 12th, 14th, then you get into the 20th, 25th, into the 30th, the deer will just gradually come back, and then you get into January. And I always would make a note. I would love those spots, because the guys would hunt the piss out of it, and the acorns, the deer would just leave, and there's marbles everywhere, So, but the hunt I got a little lackadaisical to where I said, it was cold, I'm just going to park at this parking spot, go up this drain. And I went in at daylight. It was really cold. It was probably 4 inches of snow, a little bit crunchy. And as soon as I started up the drain, I was like, dang, I shouldn't have parked there. I was just being a little bit lazy. And I went up the drain, and there were some cedars on this right side that I know does bedded in. And it was only a 400-yard walk, and I just got on that south slope there. There was oaks, acorns, and that big old 7-point that I knew was there. He come out right before dark, and he looked down to where the does should have been feeding them cedars. He was 100 yards from me. He just stared down there. He didn't see no does. So it wasn't the buck that I spooked and shut the car door. It was the does. He made 3 attempts to come down by my stand where the oaks were. 3 times he turned around. Like his body, his stomach told him, I want to go eat those acorns. His mind told him, there's something's wrong. You know, it's just little stuff like that that's like, whoa. And then you don't really realize this stuff until the hunt's over and you reflect. And I ask myself a ton of questions. Man, what happened? Why? Every hunt, every time I see a deer, in my mind, I'm asking and answering. I'm trying to figure out an answer. Different hunts that I have. When you see a deer and how he reacted and stuff like that, I try to answer that and to help me in my future hunts. So that one, I didn't think about it till I left, and I'm back at camp thinking like, what was it? And I was like, you know, and just my first instinct hunting so many years, something was off. He didn't like. What was the variable? I was the person there. So did he see me? No. Did he smell me? No. Did he hear me? No. So how did he know? He didn't know I was there, but the does were, and he didn't see those. So it's just stuff like that. And I'm sure he probably vacated that area, you know, just for that. It was off, and so I ruined that spot just by being a little bit lazy. Now, if I would have parked up the road further, like I usually do, come down at you know, like what I do in like October. If I'm hunting near a road, I'm going to go up the road a little ways, come back. I don't want them to know I'm parked there, and I should have kept using that. But I was carrying all my cold weather gear, and now I'm carrying 40 pounds, you know. And, you know, I'm like, I'll be all right. I'll just park here. And then, so it still was a great hunt, but it's always a learning experience.
So there's a lot there you just said that opens up a great part of the conversation. One thing I want to touch on is the hunting pressure aspect. You talk about like all this hunting pressure that comes in October, November, kind of pushes these deer up out of maybe some of the more prime feeding areas, you know, especially in the timber, like big oak flats or any place that's dropping a lot of acorns. So they have to live in different places, maybe more rugged areas to kind of survive. Well, when that hunting pressure dies back, they kind of shift back to those areas. Do some of those areas are also places that are probably closer to roads and more, I guess, would have been heavier hunted places earlier in the season, but now without any hunting pressure, they're kind of dropping back down, getting back to those lower elevation or easier to get to spots, and that's where you can kind of find them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've learned some of these bigger deer, but then again, that's where your scouting comes into play. I learned some of these bigger deer still want to be up on a mountain, and if the mast is there, if there was a great mast crop and it was there all year and it's there now, that's where he wants to be. He don't want to be down there with the rest of the population, but he will if that's the last. And that all depends on, you know, what elevations the acorns are falling at that year, how much, what types. So there's a lot of research you got to do throughout the season to get to that point, you know. But chances are, if you get to a spot in January and you see all kind of buck tracks, well, chances are there's not much up on the mountain. So the snow can really, you know, that's a whole nother topic about the finding the sign with the snow. And I usually like to wait at least 2 days after a snowstorm, you know, because you're going to, no, I'd like to be there during the storm, you know, that's when they move, like right before and during the storm, if I already know, I already have cameras, or if I already know about the deer that I'm wanting to hunt, if he's alive, where he lives, that's if I have already history and know where I want to be. But if it's an area that I'm going to out of state, I want to wait, because they'll move before and during the storm like you wouldn't believe. And then once that snow's down, it'll be like a lull for almost 24 hours that they're just resting now, you know, especially in some of these states like Ohio. Last year, Bo and I were down hunting in Ohio in some rugged area, and we were there 2 days before the storm, January, good acorns around, and the day before the storm, it was like there was no deer around. They were like non-existent, and it started snowing at noon. So in the morning we did like some drives and stuff, nothing happened. And as soon as it started to snow and we went back to camp, and I'm like, Bo's like, what are you so, like I was antsy. I was like, I can't wait to get out. I said, it was muzzleloader, in a storm. I said, deer are moving, Bo. I said, right now, like they're just snow starts falling, especially area that don't get a lot of snow. It just does something to them, and they're just going to move. And I was on 3 different big buck tracks, almost shot a big 10-point, and Bo chose to sit, and that's the last thing I would have done. I just get antsy and I want to move, but he ended up sitting in an area, and he moved to go look, and he come back, and there was a big buck track where he was at. But during that storm, before and right during that storm, like even if it snows through the day and in the night, that's the time to be out. And then there's always like a lull, like I feel like they feed and whatever and do their movement, and they're going to rest for a period. So like if I'm going to a state that I can't make it and I don't know about the area, I want to go 2 days, at least 2 days after the storm. Now they're going to start moving and leaving tracks. If I can get there, if snow's been down for 5 days, that's a no-brainer for me because I'm going to see all that sign, So
Also, one more thing, because we're going to talk more about weather. I'm going to talk camera strategy, food, all that, but kind of on the hunting pressure conversation. Is there anything, we talk about this with a lot of our guests, especially when we're talking about rut hunting or early season hunting, like paying attention to where the hunting pressure's at, looking for sign of human presence, trying to find those isolated pockets that there's nobody at. Is there anything that you look for? Because you've had all this hunting pressure for, say 45 days before, really late season's really getting going in December. Is there anything do you not worry about if you see people sign from November? Because that would be something that would mess me up. Like, all the bucks aren't going to be back here. There's a stand that, clear had been hunting, hunted back, a couple weeks ago, or trash or anything like that, cameras. Do you not worry about that at that time of the year? As long as you're finding sign there?
Yeah, no, they'll be right in, and they'll be there if the food's there, or if you have some does coming in heat, if you see scrapes that are freshly opened. If you don't have a frozen ground, you can find tracks, maybe after a rain. Definitely fresh scrapes opened up. Last year, oh man, there was a fresh scrape opened up and huge track in it, and that was in January, so that was a no-brainer there. That was an area that people hunted, but I know Jake Belinda shot a deer one year, and it was dark, and he called me, and we were together in January, muzzleloader hunting, and he had us. I didn't know where he's hunting, but he dropped the pin. He said, "Come to the parking lot." So it's just no, it wasn't massive, maybe 4-car parking lot. And there's this beat down. Come up the trail. It was the beat down trail that everybody walks up. And I'm thinking, like, are you kidding me? Well, 200 yards up the trail, he shot this 147-inch buck in January. Well, what it was a place he never went to, and he ended up parking down the road, hunting up on the mountain, coming down, and that buck was watching or listening to that parking spot. And he Jake saw the scrape, walked up to it, looked, it's been hit. He walked off, and he got about 80 yards. He looked back, that buck was standing in a scrape, because the buck heard Jake, but Jake come down the hill while that buck was watching the road, the parking spot. So in that deer's brain, it's like, that's a buck coming down a mountain in my scrape. So the buck stands in the scrape. Jake turns around and shoots it. So, yeah, so it's stuff like that happens, and that's a place you initially would be like, I'm not parking and going up that trail. I need to go up the trail and go till the trail disappears. But here in this situation, with that scrape being open, and the younger does they're not smart enough or educated enough to be back in the woods hiding. They're not. They're going to live around. That's the ones you see when you see all the people, the hunting pressure. You'll see them yearlings or them fawns, because they don't know any better. But them are the ones that come into heat. So the big ones are going to be shadowing. They're just got to be. And I know in years in the past, in January in Iowa, before they had a lot of EHD, it was the same thing. I'd go into these heavy hunted public, and I'd see scrapes opened up. I'd see all little doe tracks everywhere, and I'd see scrapes opened up. I'm like, now's the time to hunt. And there was big bucks moving in. I didn't see the mature doe tracks. they vacated. They were on the private somewhere, you know, they've been hunted, and they even know that maybe these fawns or whatever are coming into heat, and these does don't want no part of these big bucks. So here you have a breeding ground on this public land where people hunted hard in November, and now these young deer are there. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you. And what I would always look for is a parking lot that hasn't been parked in, you know, if you can get a month. So if you're into January, it hasn't been parked in December. No one's been parked there. If you knew that, I've even ran cameras on parking spots just to see no one's been here. So like I said, if you can get 4 weeks, they'll start moving in. It was an area that they haven't been pressured. So
we've heard that from a couple biologists that we've interviewed about once a deer gets bumped, how long does it take them to kind of go back to normal? And we've heard in the past, you know, about 2 weeks or so is what it takes for them to kind of settle back down into whatever their pattern was. So, I mean, that tracks definitely with what we've heard from other people. Now, when you're going out and you're scouting for late season hunting, so it sounds like you're looking for the food first, and then you're just trying to gauge the hunting pressure around that food.
yeah, I think food is the number one thing, Andrew. I think first off, there has to be food. I mean, there's also situations I ran into where the food is there and the buck might be a little ways away hiding, you know, but chances are they're going to stay closer just because they don't want to waste the energy, especially if then you got some cold weather. But find the food, you know, first of all is food, or if like there's some does, but food, and then see what the pressure is like, you know. So there's a few things that are going to keep them bucks. It's definitely food first, and then the chances are pressure's down, and it's good if you have them, you know, you don't have to see any little does, you just start seeing scrapes open. That's a key thing, scrapes being opened up.
Mm-hmm.